Okay, anyway, moving on a little bit here. I wanted to talk about main tanks more, because let's address this from the Overwatch League perspective again. Off-tank players are going to feel like this is a stab in the gut for them. You guys saw the tweet from Hawk and from FRD, and I'm sure there are other off-tank players in the league who feel exactly the same as well. This is a role that's existed since the beginning of Overwatch, the off-tank. It is not a role that they intended to create. They thought that they would be, that they would still be able, that you would still be able to play tank styles that were aggressive whilst playing Zarya and that kind of stuff. Or D.Va when they had that in the game at the beginning, you know, when it first got introduced. That wasn't the case. Eventually, the way that it played out is that there were fairly defined roles of main tank and off tank. And we figured that out really early on into the game's life cycle, that was something that was going to be a prevalent theme throughout Overwatch. So I understand why that feels like a stab in the gut. Now, the reaction, though, is they're taking our jobs away. That not just our enjoyment of the game, but from a pro-career point of view, they're fucking up our entire job. Because my job, if I'm a pro off-tank player, is to play off-tank. It's not to flex around and around with different things. My job is to play off-tank, not just the characters, but the role of off-tank. And that is very viable. That take is extremely reasonable. But I think what a lot of other players haven't considered is that the main tanks in the league as well are not going to be good immediately at playing these characters that have been newly introduced to the main tank role. In fact, a lot of the main tanks aren't even going to be good at new Reinhardt or new Winston, even if they were good at old Reinhardt and old Winston, because they've changed so much and the game has changed so much. Not only has the character changed, but the role of the main tank has changed. The game has changed to 5v5 as well. I find it very reasonable that people who were great at even DPS or support might be worse or might be better in the new version. So this is not just a change that fucks off tanks and leaves everybody else alone. This is a big change that fundamentally readdresses how you play Overwatch for everybody. The same evolution that we saw with like people like Miro dropping off over time is likely to happen again with this. I could even see people like, if Surefour returns to the game, Surefour seems like the kind of person that might pop the fuck off in a game like this, especially at the beginning, because he's a player that has a great brain for understanding concepts when they're new. To be able to understand how to play a game when it's fresh. And he still has the mechanical ability to play a more individualistic style of DPS, which is probably going to be more powerful in 5v5. So there are going to be people who are more team player DPS players who also are going to be hurt because their style has shifted. All I can say to people like that is, the game is going to change and evolve over time. If it wasn't this, it was going to be something for Overwatch 2. So your jobs were never going to be safe. You have to adapt, you have to evolve. That's what it means to be a pro. As for the off-tank players, though, that is a different discussion, right? Because it's not that they have to evolve. Their whole fucking role has just been, woof, it's been whisked away from them. So what do they need to do to adapt and change? For them, a niche has opened up. Their role has been axed, their job has been closed, their department store has closed down, and they've been fired as the manager of that store. But there is another job opportunity that's opened up for them, another niche within the job market, which is main tank Zarya, main tank D.Va, main tank Sigma, main tank maybe some of the other roles as well. New heroes that are being added into the game as well that come in at the tank position. Does anyone really think that Overwatch 2 is not going to be released with a new tank hero? It feels so unlikely to me that they wouldn't do that. At least one new hero in each role is like bare minimum. So there are still job opportunities there that are going to be open. If you take an example, I like the example of talking about the Seoul Dynasty because they have 3 tanks, right? But we could even... Actually, I'm going to use the San Francisco Shock because I think they're an even better example. They have Super, they have Smurf, they have Choi Obin. Choi Obin right now, will be who the community is thinking about, has potentially lost his job, right? Oh, fuck, it's gone to 5v5, only main tanks exist anymore. Smurf and Super will probably just lock it down, won't they? Choi's an incredible DPS player as well. He's much better at playing DPS than Super and Smurf are. His mechanics are better when it comes to off-tanks that have to shoot shit. So it seems likely to me that Choyobin, okay, maybe he might pivot it and try and ply his trade at DPS. That could be something that some of the off-tanks try and play if they're people like Choyobin or Fury who have been great at DPS in the past. But if they wanted to stay playing their same heroes, there are still job opportunities, maybe reduced, but there are still a large amount of job opportunities in terms of taking on a main tank position now, which will play differently to the off tanks, yes, but it will also play differently to the main tanks of today. Is there any guarantee that Super or Smurf are going to be good at main tank Zarya, main tank Hog? Well, actually, Super is pretty good at that, but main tank Diva, main tank brand new tank hero that gets added to the game? I don't think there's any guarantee of that happening. I don't think there's even a higher likelihood. I think it's very up in the air whether Super Smurf or Choyobin would be better at main tank Diva. Your brain might say, oh, well, Choyobin should be the best at main tank Diva because he plays Diva. But the role is going to be so different from how Choyobin plays it right now. So it might be that Super or Smurf end up being best at main tank Diva. It might be that someone else is better at it. Who knows? It is so up in the air, which also means that the tank players, you're going to need more than one person on a roster. You're probably going to need minimum 2 people on a roster to be able to play tank. And that's already the kind of scenario that we're at in the Overwatch League right now. Are there any teams that have more than 3 tank players? I guess the Washington Justice, they had Fury, Rhea, but they didn't have a Spark. Okay. Oh, Outlaws now that they've added Dreamer. Yes, yeah. Hunters. Yes, because they still have Elsa and Light Young, don't they? Even though they don't really use them. Yeah. So, I think it's quite likely that we get in a situation where the Overwatch League teams have minimum 2. I don't see any world in which a team is going to be good at all if they only have 1 main tank. 1 main tank to play every tank hero that's in the game coming into Overwatch 2 when you don't know how the game is even going to be played. Who the fuck is going to be mental enough to do that? Which team is going to try and scrimp and save money so hard that they only field a single tank? Okay, Valiant, Titans, Boston. Yeah, okay, all right. It is possible, okay? It is possible. But they're not going to be good. They're not going to be good. And they deserve criticism for making those decisions. To me, that isn't on the dev team. That's on the teams if they make that decision. So I think, at least for the first season, when the tank players are going to be figuring out this brave new world, you're going to need minimum 2 players that play tank on your team. And I think it's quite likely that people are probably going to go for 3. Because how many tanks are there even in the game right now? What's the exact number? What is it? 8? 1 person to be able to take 8. 2 people. So if we imagine that another hero got added once it gets to Overwatch 2, that's 9 tank heroes that would be in the game. If you're trying to prep at the beginning of an Overwatch League season, and you think, okay, over the course of the season, probably, 5 of those are going to be played for significant metas, maybe? It's unlikely you're going to get 9 played throughout the whole course of the season. There might be an argument for having 3 tank players. I think it's more likely that there's going to be 2. But for the first season of Overwatch 2 being out, the first season of 5v5, people might try and play it safe and go for 3 tanks. But my point is that I think the argument of people losing their jobs, while it definitely will happen for some people, it's not going to be a whole, every off-tank in the league is just out of a job. There's no way in which that happens. I just don't see any way. I don't even think half the off-tanks... Well, I mean, okay, when I say I don't think half the off-tanks in the league will lose their jobs, half of them might end up getting replaced by new rookie players who are better at this new role of tank. That could definitely happen. But I don't think the overall amount of tank players is going to be reduced by 50% because you've cut tanks from 2 to 1. Does anyone know how many tank players there are in the league right now? There must be at least 40 to 50, right? There's probably 50 off-tanks. There's probably 50 tank players. I don't know exactly, but it's probably around 50. If we use 50 as a decent measuring stick, what would my actual estimations be for how many tank players there would be in 5v5? I think the league would probably have between 40 and 45, I think. Because some teams will just try and be cheap and go for one main tank and they'll suck. And some teams will try and play it safe and go for 3. But I think somewhere between 40 and 45 will be accurate. Because if there's still 20 teams, I think the vast majority of them will go for 2 main tanks. And then I think some of them will play it safe and go for 3. And I think some of them will play it safe and go for 1. Or will play it cheap and go for 1. And so I think it'll end up going somewhere. If I had to be very confident, I think somewhere between 35 and 45. But I think it's probably the overall amount of tanks in the league will probably be reduced by 20%. That's still a job loss, for sure. That's still a job loss. But I think you have to be realistic with your criticism, right? Like, if you're going to criticize Blizzard for being like, what the fuck, you just shafted a whole bunch of people to play off-tank, I think you also, you have to be accurate with the numbers that you're throwing around here. And I think it's likely to be about a 20% cut.